Welcome to Yacht Crew Vlogs, where we tell the stories of those in the yachting industry. A behind-the-scenes look that discovers the individuals in the industry, their history, their passions, and what inspires them to do what they do. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome Charlotte. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Now, there is a reason we have you on here. You have impressed, you were actually a recommendation by another guest that we've had, and they had quite a few glowing things to say about you and what you're up to. But tell us a little bit about Charlotte. Who are you? Where are you from? And, what are you up to?
So I am from Germany, and I am 19 years old at the moment. And I graduated from high school last spring, and after that, after that, my plan was really to travel the world and have a nice gap year. But then the pandemic happened, and obviously all my plans blew up into nothing. And so I then decided to, instead of just traveling the world, to sail around the world.
Well, and you have actually accomplished quite a bit already so far. When did you start sailing around the world? What year?
I started last September. That's when my journey began. I think it was September. Yeah.
And where from? Where was your sort of bump off location?
So I started in Sicily. I found a boat there that then took me. Well, so the original plan was actually never really to sail around the world. That kind of happened as I kept going. I started off and I wanted to sail from Sicily to Gibraltar, and then go back home. So that would have been like a 2 to 4 weeks trip, and that was supposed to be the whole journey. But then I really enjoyed the time I had on the boat, and so I asked the captain if I could stay a little longer and if he had room for me. And he said, yeah, sure, we're going to the Canary Islands next. And then I was in the Canary Islands, and all the boats there across the Atlantic, right? And so I thought, well, if I'm already here and it's crossing season at the moment, then I should do the crossing. And so I did. I found another boat and crossed the Atlantic. That's the short version of it.
Well, and did you have any tickets and stuff? Were you capable of like, were you a yachty, or was this just something all of a sudden you decided to jump on a boat and do?
Yeah, I had a very, very little experience in dinghy sailing on a lake in Germany, but obviously very different to cruising. So yeah, it was my first experience. And I was really, really lucky because the captain of the first boat I was on, he used to be a sailing teacher in Switzerland before he started cruising himself. And so I learned a lot on that boat, and I really knew the basics. Like he gave me very, like, a lot of experience.
So are you basically, I guess, hitchhiking your way around the world via sailboats?
Yeah, if you want to call it hitchhiking, that's it, essentially.
And how does that
it's
work?
really nice.
They don't pay you then. You basically just work for your room and board essentially on board, and from one leg to the other. And when that boat stops, you find another boat and jump on board?
Yeah, exactly. So for the boats I've been on, I paid for my own food, essentially. But for the rest, it was like a work and travel kind of relationship, which was really nice. And I never would have thought that, like, when I started it, I never would have thought that the sailing community would be so open to someone who doesn't have a clue. I never thought and also in the Canary Islands, when I was looking for boats and walking around the marina asking people, hey, do you know someone who's doing the crossing? Everybody was always very welcoming. and like he said, yeah, we're not crossing this year, but maybe ask the one on Pier D or something. And that was really nice.
Nice. So you've actually managed to do about half of the world so far, correct?
Yeah, I'm now in the Caribbean, in Honduras, and right now I'm taking a break from sailing. I'm doing my dive master and dive instructor here, because diving is also a very big passion of mine. And once I'm done with that, maybe I'll go and cross the Pacific. Panama is not that far away from here, so I can go through the canal and then.
Well, let me ask you, what were you were taking a gap year. That was the original plan. What were you were obviously going to go back to school. What were you planning on taking and what was your career goals?
So I initially wanted to become a set designer or a costume designer for opera or theater, because I really, really enjoy going to the theater and I love art. But now I don't know if that is ever eventually going to happen, because my journey now is probably going to take a little bit longer than a year. I'm already 6 months in.
Well, and do you think that yachting is going to become, or sailing is going to become perhaps your career of choice as opposed to the theater?
Yeah, I can really picture myself cruising and doing that for much, much longer than just a year, especially when I have my dive instructor's license. I can really picture myself also working on liveaboards and yeah, and really combining those two passions of mine, the sailing and the diving.
Well, it's really interesting to hear your story because, it's a classic gap year. I mean, a lot of kids, especially in Europe, it tends to be the thing to do is once you get finished high school, you take that year and you go and experience the world. But
Yeah.
ironically enough, you in that gap year have truly found a calling that wasn't what you ever imagined or thought it would be.
Yeah.
Here you are. How do your parents feel about that? Interestingly enough.
Well, they really support it. They really enjoy that I get to see the world this way and that I get to do the Atlantic crossing. For an example, it was a little bit hard for them and for me too, because we crossed during Christmas and New Year. So I didn't get to say them Merry Christmas this year, but they really support what I'm doing and they really enjoy, that I have this opportunity, especially like in these times, which is crazy that I can do this.
Would you recommend this to other kids your age, heading out into the world? Would you recommend to go out and take that year and do some sailing and get their feet wet?
Yes, very, very much. I think it's a great way to see the world. And it makes you, what I found very interesting is how it makes you really feel the distance you travel. When we arrived after the Atlantic crossing, and it took us 23 days, and then I looked at flights back home, and were like the whole journey would have been 19 hours. And I was like, wow, I just spent 3 weeks sailing here and I can be back in less than a day. It's crazy. And I think it's just a great way to see it. I'm also like recommending it to all my friends that are at home, because ironically, a lot of my friends had their gap year also planned out. Well, I did not really have a plan for my gap year, but they also had a gap year planned, doing internships and also traveling a lot. And I'm the only one who actually did it in the end, because I was fortunate enough that sailing is very, what's the word? You're very isolated on the ocean. So there's no real, well, of course, there are restrictions with sailing right now, but not as many as just regular traveling.
So now that you've experienced sailing, is there something special about being a sailor for you? Is there some inspiring something about it? Does it teach you teamwork? Does it teach you how to deal with solidarity? Is there something special about sailing that you could recommend, that you've learned through sailing, that you could recommend to others?
I think the big thing for me is dealing with boredom because during the crossing, we do not have that much to do, right? And you get very creative, I think. And I learned many new things on the crossing, like even just like small things like making bracelets or something like that. One of the other crew members, she taught me how to make bracelets, and then I did that for 2 weeks straight and made 3 bracelets every day. And now I don't know what to do with the bracelets, but I can make them now.
Nice. Well, you know what, Charlotte, I wish you the best of luck. And when you do manage to make it all the way around the world, we'd love for you to check back in with us and let us know where you are, where you ended up. And if you plan on going back to school, or if you plan on becoming a sailor.
Yeah, I will let you know. Of course.
Yeah. Well, it'll be really interesting because I have a feeling, and I see the fire, something about sailors, but when you interview people that are into sailings, it's a little bit different than motor yachts, because sailors, there seems to be a real passion that goes in to sailing, and it's like a magic takes over. And when you talk to somebody about sailing, it's not about the money, it's not about it, it is about the entire experience of sailing, and it's something you can't take out of them once you find that it's in you.
Yeah, that's very true. I miss it very much now that I'm not sailing but diving. When I'm doing one, then I miss the other. So I have to combine the diving and the sailing, and then that will be the perfect life for me.
I was going to say, in an ideal world, work aboard a sailing yacht where you can also do your diving and teach diving. So fingers crossed that comes to fruition for you. Well, thank you again, Charlotte, for your time. I know that you're a very busy girl, and you've got a lot going on there, but we appreciate it, and we'll look forward to hearing back from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
No, it's been our pleasure. Once again, you've been watching another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. Please tune in again for another episode.